right. All right. Good afternoon. I mean, good evening,
Good
everyone.
evening.
Jennifer, I mean Mel, sorry. I don't know why I called you Jennifer. I have my Dr. Pepper, but not on ice. You're more fancy than I am. All right, let's see. Oh, I got messed up. Okay, so this is the Ohio Board of Pharmacy
Is
meeting
your
from
phone
yesterday.
playing?
No comment. It always
I was,
is.
I was like, God, please tell me there's no echo tonight.
Oh, especially after yesterday. Oh my goodness. Okay. Okay, I was just making sure it wasn't still going. I will disclaimer the first 4 minutes we had a little bit of technical difficulty, but it's literally nothing real big you missed. Um, so anyway, glad everybody is joining us.
Yes, welcome aboard. Hey, Renee, what's up, girl? Long time no see. I miss my Kratom family.
Yeah,
My Facebook
Facebook,
Kratom.
man, it ain't the same. All right. Whew, this is hard watching, but I think it's important everybody sees it,
Yes,
especially before the webinar.
yes. We're playing the Ohio Board of Pharmacy hearing that we watched the day that it happened. It happened on January 6th, right? I think it was.
Yeah, it was January 6th.
Yeah. And so we figured we'd play this before the American Kratom Association webinar. So y'all stay with us through the whole live stream tonight. Hey,
Yeah.
Deborah.
Hey. All right. And my cat decides to start climbing on crap the second I'm doing something. All right. Here
Hey,
we go.
Mel. Okay.
Classical opioids, such as the morphines, fentanyls, oxycodones, and hydrocodone. Additionally, 7-OH metabolized or is metabolized to metragenine pseudoindoxil, or MP, a compound that also demonstrates very high
It's not on the
potency at
screen.
mu opioid receptors. It
contributes to the overall opioid
Here's
crisis.
Sortman.
A 2025 study examining the respiratory depression of morphine and 7-OH found that both induce significant respiratory depression and could be reversed using naloxone. The authors conclude that 7-OH may expose individuals to similar risk as classical opioids. The reports from individuals on Reddit, outlined in your Appendix A of the 8-factor analysis, demonstrate that opioid-like properties associated with metragenine-related products. For example, one user reported experience with the purported 7-OH products that were, quote, reminiscent of some of my best oxy experiences. Medications approved by the FDA to treat opioid use disorders have been used to treat individuals experiencing substance use disorders associated with these metragenine-related compounds. The third factor, the state of current scientific knowledge regarding the substance. Little to no clinical dosing research exists for any metragenine-related products. No metragenine-related compound has progressed past phase 1 clinical trials. Metragenine-related compounds have not undergone any randomized placebo-controlled studies that's necessary to demonstrate the efficacy for any condition while minimizing the significant risk associated with it. Clinical presentations of metragenine-related compounds include euphoria, sedation, respiratory depression, and opioid-like withdrawal syndromes, with users acknowledging its significant addiction potential. And as stated previously, regulators in EU and the US have determined that metragenine-related compounds such as 7-OH bind to the same receptor in the brain as opioids. The fourth factor, the history and current pattern of abuse. It is not unusual for the preparation of metragenine-related compounds in the US to differ significantly from traditional kratom preparations. Where isolates and extracts are widely available in the United States, kratom was traditionally made from boiling tea leaves, fresh leaves, boiling fresh leaves. The impacts are notable as increased demand, including the 7-OH and MP products, has coincided with a wide variety of product preparations, such as gummies, organic extracts, vapes, liquid shots, and tablets. In fact, these websites stress the ease of consuming semi-synthetic products over kratom. The U.S. Poison Control Centers report multiple cases of 7-OH exposures, resulting in serious adverse outcome this year. However, the number of adverse events related to 7-OH and other mitragynine-related compounds is most likely underreported due to the lack of self-reporting among individuals, and the fact that the National Poison Data System codes for reporting cases of 7-OH exposures were only added earlier this year. The Ohio Substance Abuse Monitoring, or OSAM, network report from January 2025 found that kratom use associated with opioid use, as the substance reportedly has similar effects, and kratom is reportedly advertised to help mitigate opioid withdrawal symptoms and stop opioid use. Nationally, the FDA notes that the number of fatal overdose cases by the Drug Enforcement Administration toxicology testing program, in which one or more of these substances were detected from 2023 to 2025, are approximately threefold higher than for the years 2019 through 2022, coinciding with a more recent entry of mitragynine-related products in the marketplace. The fifth factor, scope and duration and significance of abuse. As stated previously, mitragynine preparation in the U.S. may differ significantly from traditional kratom preparations, with a wide array of product preparations available, such as the gummies, concentrated extracts, vapes, liquid shots, and tablets. The National Drug Early Warning System, or NDEWS, conducts real-time national surveillance to detect emerging drug trends. And according to the NDEWS, Reddit users report the following regarding mitragynine-related compounds. The users describe withdrawal symptoms from concentrated alkaloid products as more severe than traditional kratom leaf, some comparing them to pharmaceutical of opioid withdrawal. Limited awareness exists about the pharmacological differences between the traditional kratom and these novel derivatives, leading to an unexpected overdose-like symptoms, including respiratory depression concerns. The Ohio Substance Abuse Monitoring, or OSAM network, report from the January 2025 found that kratom use associated with opioid use. As the substance reported has similar effects, the kratom is reportedly advertised to help mitigate those opioid withdrawal symptoms and to help stop opioid use. While mitragynine-related compounds are sold in vape shops, gas stations, and other brick-and-mortar retailers, there is a growing market for these products on the dark web. And these compounds are sometimes offered with other controlled substances, such as Suboxones, Adderalls, and psilocybin. Customers on the dark web also warn of the use of these 7-OH products, specifically stating, quote, "This is the big boy stuff, more akin to the oxycodones and the Vicodin." The sixth factor, the risk to the public health. In Ohio, a growing number of deaths associated with kratom, which contains the main active constituent of mitragynine and 7-hydroxymitragynine, have been reported, indicating that these compounds are a risk to public health. From 2019 to 2024, the Ohio Department of Health reported that at least 15 deaths in which kratom is listed as a cause of death. In several forensic cases of opioid-like death with lung congestions and high post-mortem mitragynine blood concentrations, and with no obvious alternative causes of the death, have now been reported. There is also a report of naloxone being successfully used to treat and reverse kratom intoxication. There are also documented cases of mitragynine-related compounds by expecting mothers, resulting in neonatal abstinence syndrome for the newborns. These cases are particularly concerning, given that the promotion of these products as safe alternatives to opioids may well persuade expecting mothers to consume mitragynine-related compounds in order to avoid the adverse impacts of opioids to the unborn child. The evidence supports the position that these ingredients in mitragynine-related products available to consumers are void of robust quality control. And in one study, the products clearly labeled as containing the single alkaloid 7-OH all contain, quote, contain at least detectable amounts of mitragynine and mitragynine pseudoindoxil, as well as some other kratom alkaloids. So without the permanent scheduling of mitragynine-related compounds, these products will be widely available for purchase by adolescents upon the expiration of the emergency rule 4729:9-101 period 1 of the Ohio Administrative Code. A 2025 study examining the respiratory depression of morphine and 7-OH found that both induce significant respiratory depression and can be reversed using the naloxone. As stated before, the authors conclude that 7-OH may expose individuals to similar risk as classic opioids. And lastly, the labeling of mitragynine-related compounds also highlights the risk posed by these compounds. For example, one label lists death as a serious side effect. The seventh factor, potential of substance to produce psychic and physiologic dependence liability. A review of several studies conducted by the FDA found that mitragynine-related compounds, such as 7-OH, have a high affinity for opioid receptors and functional activity as an agonist at these receptors. Analysis of 329 posts to Reddit online forum kratom users between 2020 and 2022 reviewed the common themes of problematic use of these kratom extracts, leading to use disorder development and withdrawal. Even the product labeling for mitragynine-related compounds also includes statements acknowledging the ability of these compounds to produce psychic and physiological dependence, including, well, avoid if you have a history of substance use or an abuse. This product may be highly addictive. This product contains kratom. Kratom may be addictive. Products not intended for daily use. Regular use can lead to physical and/or psychological dependence, addiction, and withdrawal. Symptoms may occur upon discontinuation. Do not take more than 2 per day for 3 consecutive days. Exceeding this dose may lead to addiction and other deleterious effects. And lastly, products containing mitragynine-related compounds are being marketed in formulations that resemble other commonly misused controlled substances. For example, manufacturers are producing 7-OH products in tablet, quote, bars, which is common slang for Xanax, a benzodiazepine and a controlled substance. Eighth factor, whether the substance is an immediate precursor. Excuse me. 7-OH is a precursor to other mitragynine-related compounds. These include mitragynine pseudoindoxil and MGM-15 or dihydro-7-hydroxymitragynine. Mitragynine-related compounds are temporarily classified as Schedule I controlled substances under the Rule 4729:9-101.1 of the Ohio Administrative Code. And this concludes the review of the 8-factor criteria for mitragynine-related compounds.
Any questions for either Ms. Martin Moore or Ms. Bay?
Under the 6 criteria factors, there's some stats relative to death and related to kratom, and you about the overdose rate in comparison to other substances like alcohol, cannabis. Where does kratom fall into comparison to death, ratio of death? We have any stats in comparison to those others?
I don't have the stats to comparison, but I'm sure that there is reported deaths as experienced, as I mentioned here, from 2029 to 2024, that the Ohio Department of Health did report at least 202 deaths in which kratom is listed as a cause. Now, I do not know currently right off the top of my head what the death is for alcohol or with other substances such as fentanyl, but there have been reported deaths associated because it does affect the human body like opioids.
Is there a motion to find that after a review of all available data, the board finds mitragynine-related compounds have a high potential for abuse, have no accepted medical use and treatment in this state, and that they lack accepted safety for use and treatment under medical supervision? Based on these findings, the board hereby authorizes the filing of Rule 729:9:1.1 of the Administrative Code, the Common Sense Initiative, to classify as a Schedule I opiate or opiate derivative any material, compound, mixture, or preparation that contains mitragynine-related compounds. Is there a Mr. Grimm? Is there a second? Mr. George? Any discussion? Those in favor? Eight zero. I will now recognize Ms. Way for a review of the 8-factor analysis for mitragynine.
Excuse me. Thank you, board member. And good morning. I will begin with the 8-factor analysis for mitragynine. As you may recall, this is a follow-up to a request by the governor to review the safety of mitragynine, which is the primary psychoactive component in kratom. First factor, actual or relative potential for abuse. Kratom has a long history of traditional use in Southeast Asia, with the use of its leaf or extracts typically ingested orally for the treatment of pain and to aid in the performance of agricultural labor. These effects have been attributed to mitragynine, which acts as a partial agonist at the human mu opioid receptors. Mitragynine accounts for up to 66% of the alkaloid content in kratom. The effects of kratom in humans are dose-dependent, with small doses producing a cocaine-like stimulation, while larger amounts cause morphine-like sedative narcotic effects. The FDA confirms that no marketer has sought to develop a drug that includes kratom in the US, and mitragynine is not generally recognized safe by the FDA. Further, the World Health Organization verifies that kratom and its alkaloids have never been licensed for therapeutic use. Kratom is illegal in 33 countries, including Malaysia, where it is found naturally. It is also banned in several states, including Alabama, Arkansas, Indiana, Vermont, Rhode Island, Louisiana, and Wisconsin. A new law in Connecticut, effective October 1st of 2025, requires the State Department of Consumer Protection, or DCP, to designate kratom and 7-hydroxymitragynine as Schedule I controlled substances. On December 10th of 2025, Connecticut's DCP issued a notice of decision to move forward with the scheduling. And despite its lack of approved use, kratom and its primary alkaloid, mitragynine, have been used to self-treat conditions such as chronic pain, fatigue, psychiatric disorders, including substance use disorder and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. For example, the Ohio Substance Abuse Monitoring Network, or the OSAM, report about the availability of kratom in Ohio and its marketing towards individuals who are experiencing opioid use disorder. While others report using kratom for relaxation, euphoria, or to enhance performance, the end result for many consumers of these products have been the inability to control their use. The following is a comment submitted to the Ohio Board by the consumers of products whose manufacturers profess are natural, herbal, or kratom. Someone very close to me began using kratom, thinking that it was safe, natural way to manage stress and pain without opiates. Over time, I watched it take over their life. They became anxious, detached, angry, and sick when they tried to stop. It broke my heart to see how something so easy to buy could cause such deep harm, not only to them, but to everyone who loves them. He would pass out while alone with our 22-month-old. He has been hospitalized with heart problems from the use. We both have missed work. It has damaged our relationship, careers, children, and every aspect of our life. A 2025 study conducted interviews with 395 Kratom users and classified users into 4 distinct categories. 2 classes include people using Kratom for self-treatment of chronic pain or substance use disorder and comprise approximately 52% of the respondents. The other 2 classes, about 48% of the respondents, reported using Kratom to, quote, get high. The study also notes that individuals who reported using Kratom to, quote, get high and who had the highest probability of Kratom use disorder were more likely to characterize Kratom as, quote, habit-forming, addictive, problematic, and inconsistent in its effect, unquote. The second factor, scientific evidence of pharmacological effect of the substance. The European Monitoring Center for Drugs and Addiction, EMCDDA, notes that Kratom and its related compounds are selective and full agonists of the mu opioid. The effects of the Kratoms in the humans are dose dependent, as I mentioned earlier, with the small doses producing stimulant effects like cocaine, and the larger amounts causes sedative narcotic effects like morphine. One study conducted Kratom users in Malaysia found high rates of severe Kratom dependence among the regular users. More than half of the regular users, those using more than 6 months, reported severe Kratom dependence, while 45% show moderate Kratom dependence. The study authors also noted that regular users who consume 3 or more glasses of Kratom per day had, quote, higher odds of developing severe Kratom dependence withdrawal symptoms and an inability to control Kratom craving. Medications approved by the FDA to treat opioid use disorder have been used to treat individuals experiencing Kratom use disorder. Case examples have been cited through medical literature to support the use of buprenorphine and naloxone to treat Kratom use disorder, KUD. There are also examples of treating Kratom withdrawal symptoms with medication such as clonidine and hydroxyzine that are often used off-label to manage opioid withdrawal. Third factor, the state of current scientific knowledge regarding the substance. Little clinical dosing research exists for Kratom and its primary alkaloid metragenine. Neither Kratom nor metragenine have progressed past phase 1 of the clinical trials. It should be noted that most drugs, nearly 70%, that undergo phase 1 clinical trials succeed to phase 2 clinical trials. It is not until phase 2 that research on substance ability to treat a condition and its side effects are studied. These usually occurs with several hundred subjects who have a disease or conditions in question. Despite the increasing availability of human in vitro and in vivo animals data, the rigorous fundamental information about the pharmacokinetics of Kratom alkaloids in humans still remains limited. Metragenine has not undergone randomized placebo-controlled studies necessary to demonstrate its efficacy for any condition while minimizing the significant risks associated with the compound. FDA has warned consumers not to use Kratom because of the risk of serious adverse events, including liver toxicity, seizures, and substance use disorder. And in rare cases, deaths have been associated with Kratom use, as confirmed by medical examiner or toxicology reports. The fourth factor, the history and current patterns of abuse. Kratom has been used for centuries in Southeast Asia by laborers for its stimulant and analgesic effects. Despite the long history of use originating in Southeast Asia, the widespread commercialization of Kratom and its primary alkaloid metragenine is a recent development. Both product sold as vegetation, and those labeled as ground vegetation have been found to contain several times the amount of metragenine than actual Kratom leaf material. And as outlined in Figure 1 of the 8-factor analysis, manufacturers of products that market it as all natural and unadulterated acknowledge that the extracts are several times greater than the plant from which they start. In fact, postmortem toxicology findings from patients who used Kratom had concentrations, quote, higher than those reported in Thai individuals, consuming traditional kratom leaf without adverse effects. And as kratom commercialization has grown, so too have the numbers of adverse events reported to the poison control centers. From January 1st to July 31st of 2025, poison control centers in the United States received 1,690 reports of exposures cases involving the kratom, a number that has already surpassed the total for all of 2020. And reports of kratom exposures have been associated with opioid toxicities, including seizures, agitations, and death. Access to mitragynine can be further abused when it is isolated from kratom leaves. It can then be synthetically transformed into 7-OH and other semi-synthetic opioids, some with significantly enhanced mu-opioid receptor activities. The fifth factor, the scope and the durations and significance of abuse. Although there is apparent consensus that the number of Americans who use kratom is in the millions, the precise number of those who use is more nebulous. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration has estimated that in 2021, 1.7 million Americans aged 12 and older use kratom. More recently, Harvard Medical School estimated that between 2 and 15 million Americans may be using kratom. The Ohio Substance Abuse Monitoring, OSAM network, reports from January 2025 found that kratom use is associated with opioid use, as the substance reportedly has a similar effect, and the kratom is reportedly advertised to help with mitigate opioid withdrawal symptoms and to stop the opioid use. They state in their advertisement on the kratom Facebook page, advertised as a way to get off the opioids, certain kind of opioids. Kratom has similar withdrawal symptoms as heroin. Kratom mimics the effects of heroin, but the POs, or the parole officers, are aware of it now. OSAM also reports that kratom is desirable to some because it is not always included on drug screens, unlike the other controlled substances. Additionally, public comments received by the Board of Pharmacy from the family and friends of kratom users report issues related to relapse by those in recovery, significant weight loss, inability to cease use despite the adverse impact on the personal relationships and finances, also cause liver damage and heart issues. The sixth factor, the risk to the public health. FDA has warned consumers not to use kratom because of the risk of serious adverse events, including the liver toxicity, seizures, and substance use disorder. In rare cases, death have been associated with kratom use, as confirmed by the medical examiner and toxicology report. And in Ohio, a growing number of deaths associated with kratom have been reported, indicating that it is a risk to the public health. From 2019 to 2024, the Ohio Department of Health reported at least 202 deaths in which kratom is listed as the cause of the death. Several forensic cases of opioid-like deaths with lung congestions and high postmortem mitragynine blood concentration level with no obvious alternative causes of death have now been reported. There is also a report of naloxone being successfully used to treat and to reverse kratom intoxication. States who were previously at the forefront of kratom regulation are now reversing course. For example, Utah developed a regulatory scheme that allowed continued access of kratom over the counter. Despite age restrictions and limited alkaloid access, overdose deaths related to kratom and treatment for kratom use disorder still persisted. The Utah State Medical Examiner reported nearly 160 kratom-related deaths over a 5-year period. While most of those overdoses involved polysubstance use, the state saw almost 50% as many kratom-only deaths in the most recent 12-month reporting period in Utah, as Utah has had seen since 2014. Consequently, the Utah legislature proposed to add all alkaloids from kratom and their analogs to the state's list of controlled substances in November of 2025. The bill's sponsor originally voted to regulate kratom in 2019, but now sees the kratom in all forms as a dangerous opioid, masquerading as a supplement. There are also documented cases of kratom use by expecting mothers, resulting in neonatal abstinence syndrome of these newborns. These cases are particularly concerning, given that promotion of kratom is supposed to be a safe alternative to opioids. They may well persuade expecting mothers to consume kratom products to avoid the adverse impacts of opioids on their unborn child. Kratom products are also advertised with misleading statements and information to provide the sense that it is a safe alternative to controlled substances. For example, one manufacturer states, quote, "Feel better with only kratom products studied in clinical trials," and quote, "US made in our FDA registered space in Florida," unquote. As indicated previously, mitragynine has never successfully made it to phase 2 clinical. Evidence supports the position that the ingredients in kratom available to consumers are void of robust controls. In 2019, FDA conducted laboratory testing in 30 different kratom products from a variety of sources. The analysis found both significant levels of lead and nickel at concentrations that exceed safe exposure for oral daily drug intake. A third-party analysis of kratom products also found samples that exceeded daily exposure limits for lead. The authors noted that, quote, "Non-extract products, powders, capsules, tablets, generally contain greater concentrations of the elemental impurities than extract products or the soda preparation." In 2018, the CDC investigated a multi-state outbreak of salmonella infections linked to kratom. The agency reported that a total of 199 people were infected with the outbreak strains of salmonella across 41 states, including 7 individuals in Ohio. Additionally, there are no age verification requirements to prevent the sale of kratom products to children. This raised serious concerns about the impact of these compounds and access, the compounds on the developing brain and the access to these compounds. The 7th factor, potential of substance to produce psychic or psychological dependence liability. Cases of dependence to kratom have been documented in the last several decades. Mitragynine has agonist activity at the mu-opioid receptors like opioids and may lead to dependence and addiction. Further, the European Union drug agencies, FDA, DEA, Mayo Clinic, and others agree that individuals can develop a dependence on kratom, to kratom. According to the FDA, cases of kratom-related SUDs have also been observed. And in these cases, the individuals met certain criteria for SUD, including using kratom for longer than intended, using more kratom than intended, having cravings for kratom, continuing to use kratom despite adverse consequences, increasing the amount of kratom used to produce the same effect, and experiencing withdrawal symptoms when kratom use was stopped. In-person interviews with convenient samples of long-term daily oral kratom users in Southeast Asia find up to 3/4 reporting withdrawal symptoms after cessation. And lastly, it is not unusual for kratom manufacturers themselves to acknowledge the same risk of developing a dependence to kratom. I had mentioned earlier, one such acknowledgement provides, quote, "Sensing the need to up your serving size or not feeling the expected results, a tolerance break might be the trick. Take 2 to 3 days off from kratom, then start at a lower serving size." Despite warnings that kratom may be habit-forming and should not be consumed every day, testimonials posted by kratom manufacturers encourage daily use for relief of discomfort, stating, quote, "This is my favorite kind. It is the best for relieving daily discomfort in your mind or your body." The 8th factor, whether the substance is an immediate. Mitragynine is a known precursor to mitragynine-related compounds, which are Scheduled 1 controlled substances. According to the European Union Drug Agency, quote, "The chemical total synthesis reported for several kratom alkaloids are too complex to be used for economic production of any of these compounds." However, metrageny can serve as a chemical precursor to the more potent 7-hydroxymetrageny. Unquote. That concludes my 8-factor analysis.
Does the board have any questions for either Ms. Sway? Is there a motion to find that after review of all available data, the board finds metragenine has a high potential for abuse, has no accepted medical use and treatment in the state, and that it lacks accepted safety for use and treatment under medical. Based on these findings, hereby authorizes the filing of Rule 4729:9-1-01.2 of the Administrative Code with the Common Sense Initiative and the Joint Committee on Agency Rule Review to classify as a Schedule I opiate or opiate derivative any material, compound, mixture, or preparation that contains metragenine. Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor? 8-0.
You could probably end it from there.
Having concluded the first item on the agenda, the board will now take a brief recess.
Yeah, that was some bullshit, dude.
Bull ass fucking shit. So, like I said, what makes Ohio's 8-factor analysis differ from the federal 8-factor analysis?
Exactly.
That's what I want to know. What makes theirs different, special? Oh my gosh, your cell phone?
Okay, is it off?
I guess we'll find out. So yeah, and kratom is not a precursor to the 7-OH.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Mac even explained that a few times.
He sure did.
A few times, yeah.
McCurdy even explained it when we were at the Champ Show in July, and he showed up there to do his where we had that freaking town hall thing with the 7-OHers.
Oh yeah. I'm trying to.
Oh my gosh. So hopefully tonight because the webinar is fixing to start here in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So we're gonna find out what our next steps are. So what we're gonna need to do to combat this BS. I mean, I already know that there's there's a public comment period. I know that.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. It's just a shit show lately.
Save the leaf. Yep. And you know what? We have been put in this situation to where we need to. You got to pick. It's either the leaf or 7-OH. We've been forced into this situation. I don't fall for that. We need to band together and link up elbows, stand side by side. We got to advocate together. Nah, fuck you.
No, 7-OH is not kratom. I mean, they're completely too. If we even thought that were the case, and we decided kumbaya, let's band together, kind of bullshit, that 100%. kratom would go down because 7-OH will go down. I mean, there's just too many people getting hooked on it.
It's bad. It's so bad. It is so bad. Every single day, I will wake up to new comments. I will wake up to new messages, to new people that got duped into this BS. And if you're a 7-OH consumer, then you are contributing to the downfall of kratom.
Yep. And, for the kratom advocates that have been kratom advocates for years that switched over to 7-0, every single one of them eventually
regret it.
ends up having, And it's like, dude.
You know, and I say this all the time too. There's multiple seasoned kratom consumers and advocates that got duped into this shit. And you know, when I read their messages, it freaking breaks my heart. They're too scared to say anything. You know, and I
Yeah.
get it. I understand. You know,
But I mean, this is a whole different beast. You know what I'm saying? I could see. I don't know. I ain't judging anyone, but don't sit there and say anything because I'm on my soapbox about it, telling the truth.
yep.
I thought about it, Renee, like back in the beginning. I mean, I'm not saying, oh yeah, I'm gonna do that. I'm just like, oh, eventually I'll probably try it one day, thinking it's just like no big deal. I wouldn't touch that shit if I got a fucking truckload of it for free, and they pulled up in my driveway right now, and they said all of this is free. I don't want to touch it. I go burn it in the backyard.
I've had thousands of dollars of free 708 samples in my hands. And I say this all the time too, that this is how I know I'm a recovered addict, because I never once thought, oh, let me go sneak off into the bathroom and go try this, or let me bring some back to my hotel room and see if I will get that euphoria or catch that nod. You know, no, I didn't want nothing to do with it.
I just don't understand. And again, you know, I mean, I shouldn't be surprised by now, but it's not right for them just to switch up what they, you know, the facts, like the whole 8-factor analysis. Like,
Yeah.
you know, okay, that had to be different from the one they used years ago. It's crazy. Don't make no sense.
Yeah, well, seriously, what makes how does just specifically Ohio's 8-factor analysis trump the federal 8-factor analysis? Well, wait, where'd I go?
Sorry.
I just gotta look to my side. Well, the time to sound the alarm. Advocates need to get active. All consumers, vendors, everyone. Yes, indeed, Mike.
Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
indeed. We've been doing this shit 6.5 years for me. Over 6.5 years. Excuse me, I burped. Got my squirt burp. I'm cheating on my Dr. Pepper with a squirt tonight. I've never once stopped advocating, you know, because I've never stopped researching, because till this day, I am still amazed that I am the Misty that I am today. How is it that this little ground up tea leaf that comes from Southeast Asia that some farmer picked out on a hot, humid ass day, how is it that this is continuously saving me from today? It's saving me from my chronic pain. But 6.5 years ago, it walked me into my pathway into recovery.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. I mean, plain leaf does exactly what it needs to do.
Mm-hmm.
Helps me manage my pain levels. Sorry. I'm also trying to eat some mints, and I don't want to like crunching into things. So I'm like, okay. But yeah, 11 years now for me. They never mentioned Marty McKay. Yeah, they actually did not.
They didn't say nothing about Marty McCary. Robert Kennedy. What is he? Health Secretary Robert Kennedy, or the DEA? That DEA man,
Yeah, the sublingual 708 products are the worst. The fast onset can make it more addictive. I can totally see that.
man.
And then, you know, some people are like, oh, you know, you don't get messed up on, you know, this is Reddit though. But it's like, dude, and then you read stories about how people are like, man, this is the best shit. I feel exactly like I'm taking oxys and blah, 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 blah. It's like, you know,
You know what? The thing that they post over there on Reddit, at first, you know, it was like, okay, they're just making this shit up. But when it came to the people that we've known in our community for all these years, when it came to them reaching out to us on the side to tell us their story, it is identical to what the Reddit people are saying.
Yep.
They're losing Suboxone profits. If anything, they're creating more profits for Suboxone, because what was our analysis? Like, there's like, I don't know, 33% of the people that will use whole leaf kratom to get off of 7-OH. Then there's 33% of people that will use metragenine extract, then transition to whole leaf kratom. And then there's about 33% of people that will use MAT treatment to get off 7-OH.
And I think a lot of it, like, I was saying last night we were live on TikTok, a lot of the kratom advocates, like, they don't want to use plain leaf to get off of 7-OH. I feel like they're just done with it all. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're just done. And so they'll either go cold turkey or go on MAT.
Yep. Dang, Scars, you.
Well, you know what? At least you know, though.
Yeah, at least you know. I don't want to fuck around and find out. like I said, I would be. You know what? Like I said, I never stopped researching, and I totally nerd out whenever the research and stuff comes out, because it's like, wow, what they're saying is totally what aligns with what I'm feeling, what my testimony is, why I didn't relapse. None of that. I feel like if I did 7-OH, I would, dude, there's like people spending 40 grand a year.
Yeah, I don't know where these people be getting that money either, man. But I mean, there's people that are losing their jobs, they're losing
401ks.
Yeah. It's like, dude, there's something wrong with that.
They're getting divorced. They're losing their kids because they done fell down the 7-0 rabbit hole.
I don't know. I've heard some people, Mike, I think it's just like another thing where it's like per person, because I've heard some people say, they're still feeling some type of withdrawal, but they'll take like 4 or 5 grams of leaf and it makes them feel a lot better. And then you got some people saying it won't touch it. And a lot of people use like extract the first couple of days and stuff like that. But it's like, and some people, again, like, I just think they don't want to mess with it. So they just go to MAT.
How did the 6 states manage to ban it? They banned it way back in the day when the DEA was going to schedule kratom. That's when these 6 states jumped on the bandwagon to jump aboard it. And then little did they know, 2 months later, the DEA rescinded its notice of intent to ban because they followed the science and they had a public outcry. That's what happened. And it's been extremely hard to reverse these bans. Rhode Island reversed their ban.
Yeah. I feel like we were pretty close in Arkansas, too.
Yeah, we were.
But the governor sucks.
Yep. That lady from the Department of Health got up there. The same Department of Health that banned it because a Suboxone doctor went and freaking had a hissy fit.
A single Suboxone doctor.
Suboxone doctor.
I think the timeline for public notice was like
8 hours.
8 hours, yeah.
8 hours, and nobody knows where it was published. So,
yeah, our side was not represented at all in that meeting. There was no questions. There was nothing.
Grimy, Illinois is still on the chopping block because they're doing it city by city over there, or village by village.
Yeah.
So don't get comfortable. Do not get comfortable.
There was another one I read about yesterday. I can't remember where it was, though. Rivers? No. Crap.
Don't say anything because, our haters
Well, that's true.
love watching us. They like to counter advocate our advocacy, so we got to be careful. I don't even know who that is, Scars.
Ramaswamy.
Who the heck is that?
It's one of them government dudes.
Oh, is it?
Ramaswamy. I don't know what he is. I know he's like one of the cabinet. I think he's a cabinet member. There we go. Yeah. Vico tabs.
Wow.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Oh, okay. I don't know, dude. I don't know.
I didn't know he was
What a
running for
name.
governor. Yeah. Yeah, he did. Okay, never mind. That's how I. Thank you, Scars.
Hey, Dr. Heidi.
Hey, Dr. Heidi. I didn't know he was running for governor though in Ohio.
Well, this is supposed to be the funny the names that people are calling DeWine is hilarious. They call him Dewini or D-Swine. But I guess this is like his last year. So he's trying to go out with a bang.
I mean, I don't even know much about it, but he looks like one of those dudes who just kind of does whatever he's told, and he doesn't have like a spine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Utah's full of
Utah is
shit.
full of crap.
Yeah, they're not enforcing their KCPA. Then they come back and want to say it's not working when we need to ban. It's also the rumblings are that it's more with Senator Mike McKell. It's more of a personal situation with him and other senators and the AKA.
So stupid.
So petty.
Well, and to ruin people, to make people suffer because you got your feelings hurt. Get the out of here with that, man. Most aren't big fans of DeWine. You mean DeSwine? I'm gonna start using that. Yeah, I don't know. Like when I saw that interview of him after Kennedy called him about, the ban.
Yeah.
It's like you could tell his feelings was hurt.
Yeah. I don't even know what that would. I don't even know what you're trying to say, but I could see like D Weasel.
I was thinking about something else.
D Wiener. All I know is, we're going to find out with this AKA webinar what we're going to need to do next. So just know, like I say, Colorado, I helped, pass the KCPA out here. I never sat down and got comfortable. I will always fight and advocate in other states. So I am here for you, Ohio. I am here for any other state. But Ohio, yeah, you got me. And Utah.
I mean, it's just, until the federal KCPA gets passed, none of us can really get comfortable.
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, I feel like the whole 70H coming in was at the exact right time to where it just messed everything up as far as federal KCPA goes.
It did.
It's been nothing but a big, giant, stupid pimple blemish on Kratom's ass.
It's been a hemorrhoid.
And I'm so sick of it. And anybody that says otherwise has been in a box or in a freaking closet locked up somewhere for the past 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
So this ain't the Hallmark Channel, and we're not all going to start holding hands and kumbaya with 70H to advocate for them.
I proudly say that nope. No. You don't have me as a backup. I will not be there for you. Your 70H is not my leaf.
You know what, though? I love that Mac always does try to answer questions, even if it's a long time.
Yeah.
And he always answers them in a way you can understand, too.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what all he's going to talk about. I always feel better after a webinar, too.
I do, too.
Because it's almost like, I know he doesn't, he's always constantly working in the background on plans and what, so it's nice to like know what they're doing.
Yes, Simon says there's way more plain leaf users than there are 70H. 70H has only been on the market since like late 2023, but the devastation that it has caused, it's actually recruited seasoned Kratom consumers because they either one got tricked into believing it was a more potent form of Kratom, like an extract, or two, they just was like, hey, let me try this out, buddy.
Because they still thought about chasing that dragon, even though, I mean, for whatever reason, I think that they thought, people, because you hear Kratoms is so addictive and shit all the time. So I'm betting that they went into it thinking, oh, well, people said the same thing about Kratom. It's probably the same situation type of thing.
Yeah. RFK did fight Ohio.
Yeah.
I don't know what the newest information is. That's the webinar is about to start here, so we'll find out soon.
It sounds like they were like, okay, well, they told us not to do it. We're going to do it, quote unquote, the right way. And so then they just came up with all this BS and threw it together. So it was, quote unquote, looked like it was the right way. Okay, here we go.
Here we go. Here we go, yo.
Oh, wait. I think I have to do that. Yeah. Oh, see, I didn't do that last time. Took me forever to figure that out.
That's how we learn.
That's right.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to everyone. I know this is being live streamed, and of course, we'll copy it or video it and put it up on YouTube as well. My name is Mac Caddo. I'm the Senior Fellow in Public Policy with the American Kratom Association. This webinar really is going to focus on some specific state activities that are going on related to kratom. But I wanted before that to kind of give everyone sort of a general landscape of where we are, both at the federal and the state level. Obviously, in the July 29th, 2025 press conference brought needed attention to the 7-hydroxymitragynine or 7-OH issue. It obviously was intended by the Department of Health and Human Services, Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and FDA Commissioner Marty McCary to the 7-OH issue, which they have determined is an existential threat to the safety and health of the American people. And they laid out their case for it. And unfortunately, because of a news media that even during the press conference that was held had a hard time grasping the difference between natural kratom leaf products and 7-OH. And that confusion is carried over into numerous outlets. And I've got to tell you that Commissioner McCary did a magnificent job in not only explaining it at the press conference, but he also went on multiple media outlets, national media outlets, in order to actually clarify why the FDA was focused on 7-OH and not natural kratom leaf products. And that confusion has found its way into a number of the state actions that we're going to discuss tonight. And I think it's one of the challenges that we have in order to educate both public health officials and policymakers at the state and local levels about what these differences are, why the FDA has chosen to take the action that they have based on the evidence and data they have available to them, and why it is critically important that that distinction between the two is transformed into public policies that make sense. There's the lazy way out, which is to say, well, we can't tell the difference between them, so why not just ban them all? And of course, that is a false premise. It's one that has not been the foundation for public policy, particularly with scheduling issues in other substances, because obviously, if you take a substance that is somehow adulterated or chemically manipulated, as 7-OH has done, from the original product, you don't ban them all. And I think the most famous example of an adulteration that was deliberately done was in the Tylenol scandal in Chicago, where there were a number of people who died. And instead of banning Tylenol, the obvious solution was to find how the proper reaction from a public policy standpoint would be. And in that particular case, it was to strengthen the packaging requirements around Tylenol so that, and other products that are sold over the counter, so they could not be easily adulterated by a nefarious individual who decided that they want to use that product platform as a way to kill people or to injure them going forward. So these are tough issues, but they're ones that cannot be, we can't get into this idea that we ban kratom products because there are bad actors out there who are adulterating those products currently using chemical formulations and manipulations, which are obviously illegal and should not be allowed to be used. The DEA is currently evaluating the recommendation that has been made by HHS and FDA for the scheduling of 7-OH. The evidence and data is published on the FDA and 7-OH website. It is clear in terms of the evidentiary basis for doing so. Clearly, the only challenge that's left is how do you take the reality in the 7-OH space where there are bad actors who are already have started, because of the threat of a ban, have already started creating the next level of 7-OH products requiring a higher level of chemical manipulation, which are pseudodoxal products that are infinitely more potent. And then some people are actually creating what is clearly a lab manufactured product called MGM 15 and 16. And those products are currently being sold in the state of Florida. I hear the advocates for 7-OH say, oh, this just isn't the accurate representation about what our marketplace is like. We don't want those products on the marketplace. But I remember standing on the stage at the Champ Show in Las Vegas back in July of last year in a debate with Jeff Smith from Hart, where he defended the industry by saying, when I made the point that there were product formulations being made by the 7-OH community that were clearly attractive to children, including the manufacture of ice cream confection cones, which have no other a marketplace other than children. And he definitively stated on the stage there, and I will also point out that the moderator for Hart in that debate was Michelle Ross, who's a big advocate now for the Seven Hope Alliance group, another group that's advocating for 7-OH. And he said that they had removed those products from the marketplace and they were no longer being sold. Yet, just a few steps away on the floor of the Champ Show, I walked out right after the debate and identified 4 or 5 manufacturers or exhibitors who were selling those 7-OH confection ice cream cones. Now, when we pointed out that the product formulations that are being used in the 7-OH marketplace today, which includes these sublingual and fast dissolving capsules in the form of chewable not capsules, tablets. And now they're saying, oh, well, they're not selling those anymore. Those are films and they're not selling them. You can buy them today on the internet. This defense of the false defense of trying to say, oh, we're not doing that anymore, simply doesn't hold muster. But the critical point, which they continue to refuse to answer, is why. And I think there are 2 fundamental questions. One is, what basis, what evidence and data did the 7-OH industry have prior to market entry in order to justify the reasonable basis for safety of their products under the conditions of use? They have not been able to answer that question. And in fact, it was the chief science officer for the Hart organization who participated in a leadership summit that we organized at the American Kratom Association in January of 2025, when he was asked the question, was there the required scientific evidence in September of 2023 when the 7-OH products were put onto the market? And his answer was no, they didn't, that science didn't exist. In January of 2025, a year and a half or more after the entry of those products, he said they still didn't have the required science in order to comply with federal law, but they were hoping to have it by mid-2025 and certainly into 2026. That is not the way the federal law operates with respect to these kinds of products entering the marketplace. And the threshold issue is whether they have the required science in order to do it. And clearly, their own science officers indicate that they did not. Now, when I ask these questions, and I've done so repeatedly on various forums, including with Miss Ross, who, by the way, gets angry with me because she wants to be called Dr. Ross, I respect that when a legitimate scientist has a different kind of opinion, but this isn't about a independent scientist now making an evaluation of some scientific research that's been done. Ms. Ross is a paid advocate for the Seven Hope Alliance and is no longer just expressing or interpreting scientific data. She is an advocate for them. And that, of course, requires that she be appropriately titled along the way. And I know she gets frustrated with it. She calls me a misogynist. No, it's about whether or not there's credible evidence that's available to us in order to make these kinds of decisions. And the second question that they're obviously not answering is, why is it that virtually every one of the 7-OH products that are on the marketplace today in their marketing material tout how these are going to provide therapeutic benefits in the form of pain relief and a number of other therapeutic benefits from the consumption of 7-OH products? At the American Kratom Association, we have reported more than 100 kratom manufacturers who have made illegal therapeutic claims on those kratom products because we believe that the integrity to the law needs to be maintained. And in fact, those companies have been reported, and the 7OH companies are on the same boat. If you can't go to a 7OH manufacturer and not see that they're claiming these therapeutic claims, which are illegal under federal law, unless you have submitted the required data that would justify an approval under the new drug application process, or at a minimum, if you're using a structure function claim, which is allowable under the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, then you certainly have to go through the new dietary ingredient notification process. Just hasn't happened. There's some entitlement that the 7OH people believe that they have along the way. So that's the challenge that we're facing now with an industry that seems hell-bent in order to maintain their presence in the marketplace without any adherence to federal laws along the way. And they justify what they're doing as saying, well, you've all heard the arguments, well, we're the same as kratom, which is complete and total nonsense because we know that kratom is a natural plant. And there is no way that they can make the argument, although they attempt to do so. And I understand why they want to do it. They say they're the same. In fact, they go to the ridiculous claims that the 8-factor analyses that was done by Jack Henningfield originally in 2016 and then updated in 2021 and 22, they claim that Dr. Henningfield's work says that 7OH is not schedulable. The 2016 and 2021 8-factor analysis evaluated the trace amounts of 7OH that are in the kratom plant material that is after it's dried and shipped and sent to the United States. They were not talking about chemically reformulated or manipulated 7OH material, which flips the content of the product to make it a majority 7OH rather than a majority mitragynine. And it makes mitragynine in a 7OH product a trace amount as opposed to just the opposite with a legitimate natural leaf kratom products. The FDA has made that distinction. HHS has made that distinction. And I think you'll see shortly the DEA will make that distinction. But the 7OH people are desperate in order to try to attach themselves to a legitimate scientific article, when in fact it does not apply because it is in 2023, in September of 23, that 7OH products entered the marketplace. And now there is an 8-factor analysis that's been done and updated by Dr. Henningfield that was submitted to the DEA, which you don't hear anything about from the 7OH people. And it concludes that 7OH products should not be allowed on the marketplace, given the current chemical composition and the obviously the 8 factors in terms of their full evaluation along the way. So they like to borrow from the science that's been done without having a credible basis in order to do it. But let's make no mistake, the anti-kratom lobby, and they sometimes will expand that to 7OH, are doing what they consider to be the God's work in order to stop kratom from being sold in the United States and banning of kratom completely. And they are trying to attach themselves, and I'm talking about the Kratom Danger Awareness and other groups like that. Back in mid-December, the KDA people, and there's a fellow who is one of their advocates, he calls himself on X.com, Kratom Dad. I challenged him to a debate. I think that the most reasonable way for us to have a healthy exchange of ideas without sitting behind a keyboard and being a keyboard warrior is to have a discussion, make it public, expose it to the challenge of having to say it out loud and to engage in a debate back and forth with one another. Initially, Kratom Dad agreed. And then after consultation with he and Wendy and another father of a person who believes that their child died of kratom, they decided that a debate was not a good idea unless, and this was an important caveat, they gave me 10 conditions that required me to adhere to and to agree to before we could have a debate. Now, I thought that was really interesting because, in my opinion, a free exchange of ideas isn't really about setting conditions on a debate that are simply unfair. But in this particular case, they had these specific recommendations. For example, they wanted me to admit in going in on this that, in fact, I knew that there are no such things as I would agree that there are kratom alone deaths. I have not seen any evidence or data to support a claim that there are kratom alone deaths. It's possible, and maybe, but so far it hasn't been proven based on the evidence that's been publicly available. And that's why I argued that these kinds of discussions are important, and we certainly could have an open and free debate about whether any of that is true. Unfortunately, they weren't really interested in having that discussion along the way. Secondly, they said that I had to acknowledge that the presence of other substances in kratom-related fatalities does not negate kratom's role as a contributing factor, and those cases cannot be dismissed. I partially agree with that. It doesn't negate that possibility that maybe there are some kratom-related fatalities where maybe kratom itself was the cause of the death, but there's been no science to document that, and there haven't been any studies to show that kratom itself interacts with some other consumed substance to cause a debate. I offered to debate the issue because that is an important one, and of course I failed to meet that condition along the way. They also required that I had to acknowledge that deadly interactions between kratom and prescription or over-the-counter medications or people with medical conditions all represent deaths that can and should have been prevented. Well, that requires that you assume that kratom was the catalyst with those other kinds of substances or the underlying health condition, which then precipitated a pathway to a death. It's simply not true. There is some known evidence that there are drug-to-drug interactions. There are drug-to-supplement interactions. That's why the FDA has their FDA adverse event reporting system database to serve as an early warning for those kinds of interactions. And when those interactions are reported, the FDA observes a cluster of adverse events associated with two substances, and let's assume, for the sake of argument, kratom and some other prescription medication, they would then take action. That would require them to look at the controlled substance, in cases the prescription medication, controlled in the sense of regulated, and they would then require that a black box warning be put on that prescription medication that says you cannot consume this product with kratom. There's not been a single product where that requirement has been imposed because the FDA has looked at all of the so-called kratom deaths and has not seen the cluster of adverse events associated with kratom and that particular substance. So you just have to look at what the FDA has done. It's not what the AKA has done. It is not anything that we have contributed to. It is not our speculation. It is not our theory. It is, in fact, what the FDA has done along the way. Fourthly, I had to acknowledge that KDA is a volunteer-led Facebook group comprised primarily of family members who've lost loved ones to mitragynine toxicity. I will take them at their word at that. I have no way of verifying the claim. What I do know is that there was an offer and a statement made by Matt Wetherington, a trial lawyer, that he was going to fund the KDA with a significant amount of money in the millions. And so the fifth requirement they had was that the AK acknowledges that it was wrong to characterize the Kratom Danger Awareness as an organization puppeted by outsiders and funded with dark money, their words, and doing so just increases hostility towards us as grieving families. Let me tell you something first. I have great empathy for any family who's lost a loved one. I know every family has suffered a loss, or you know someone who suffered a loss, and you can understand how that is obviously a deeply personal and an emotional event in your family lives. But there's a difference when you become a formal advocacy organization and you are not entitled to some protection or sympathy when you become that advocate that pushes a narrative which is grounded in information that you may believe and may wholeheartedly embrace, but it is not grounded in the science. And then when you are challenged, you cannot retreat back and say, "Oh, you're attacking grieving families." No, we're attacking the message. which is not grounded in any evidence and data along the way. But in this particular case, they're talking about the information that was obtained publicly, where a trial attorney offered to fund millions of dollars into this. And so please blame my lying eyes and ears about the support for the KDA from child lawyers. Certainly, they can provide the statement that any claim made by the KDA social media platform and call that trial attorney a liar for having said it, but don't come and blame us because we take it at face value along the way. The sixth thing that they said, that as a newly formed nonprofit, the KDA, with approximately $240 in donations to date, the KDA's resources are minuscule compared to the multi-billion dollar kratom industry and the billions of dollars invested in kratom advocacy efforts. If we're in the game of trying to suppress free speech and saying to companies or to individual consumers and advocates that we can't speak and that we can't fund these advocacy efforts, then we're somehow barred from participating in the debate. It's silliness. And yet they want that to be a condition of having any debate with me because, of course, they want to be this, obviously the underdog. They want to be viewed as the victim along the way. I say stand up and let's have the discussion. Deny and show with evidence on your documents that you're not getting funded by these trial attorneys, and then we could have that discussion further. Seventh, they say that medical examiners are trained forensic experts, and although no system is infallible, interesting caveat, the consistent identification as kratom as a causal factor in thousands of fatal cases across jurisdictions is not a vast conspiracy to falsely blame kratom. Well, I would correct them, and it's an important correction along the way. There are not thousands of fatal cases that are concluding that kratom was the cause of death. There may be hundreds of cases that are attributable to kratom being a part of the toxicology screen where it's detected in the bloodstream, but there are not thousands of cases where the kratom is viewed as the causal factor in a fatality. I'll give you an example of how this really goes off the rails. You know about the mother in Ohio where the coroners determined that it was a kratom caused fatality, and we sued them. And in the end, it came out that the coroners had to adjust the cause of death, admitting that in fact that the information and data that they had initially relied upon was insufficient to draw that conclusion. And in fact, they changed the cause of death to undetermined based on their review of new literature that wasn't all that new, by the way, that was available to them. They simply chose not to look at it, but it's become the cause du jour for some medical professionals to blame kratom. No better example than what happened in the middle school in Georgia, where the report was given by the school administration that they had 5 middle schoolers who were hospitalized because of ingesting a kratom product. And there was a criminal investigation that was opened by the sheriff. We called the sheriff and said, are you willing to allow the substance to be tested by an independent laboratory, which he was willing to do. And when that test was done for 116 illicit substances to determine what the cause of these so-called hospitalizations were, they found nothing. And do you know what that substance was? It was this. It was dots, candy dots that you can buy in any grocery store or convenience store around America. This is what, at least what the parents and the children were claiming caused these hospitalizations. And all of this, all of the attraction to kratom came when an emergency room doctor, a trained medical professional, allegedly tested the products, which obviously proved not to be true, and concluded and told the parents that this was a kratom product, or likely a kratom product, that caused these hospitalizations. It simply wasn't true. And yet it feeds this hysteria, and it certainly goes to the anti-kratom advocacy community as a validator for proving once again that kratom was the culprit in something. And when testing is done, and this is the important point, when testing is done, it proves not to be true. That was true when the Centers for Disease Control did their survey of kratom-associated deaths. And of those 92 kratom-associated deaths, where the coroners and medical examiners reported that it was a kratom-associated death. They looked at it, and the CDC confirmed that it was only 7 of the 92 that were kratom only by the description and report of the coroner or medical examiner. When the CDC asked for the blood samples so that they could independently test them, they were able to obtain 4 of the 7. There are 3 blood samples that weren't available because they hadn't drawn a sufficient amount of blood. And what the conclusion by the CDC was, of the 4, all 4 of them, they found were in fact polydrug use using more sophisticated technology. But all of the so-called kratom-associated deaths are part of the database relied upon by the anti-kratom advocates, and they do not want to be accountable for what the science actually shows. They do not want to be accountable for what the actual data and evidence is in supporting their claim that somehow kratom is the singular cause of a kratom death. And that's why we've said from day one that as we have examined every autopsy report that we're permitted to get our hands on, that we've been able to identify that in fact what was believed to be, for whatever circumstance, to be a kratom death turns out to be, as the FDA and as the National Institutes on Drug Abuse have both concluded, that kratom deaths are rare, but when they do occur, they're because of polydrug use or adulterated kratom products. And you see reports that are widely circulated now that there's X number of deaths, increased deaths in kratom in the last 2 years. Well, guess what happened within the last 2 years? There's 7-OH. And is there testing that's available for 7-OH to determine whether or not kratom actually, or in this case, 7-OH caused the death? And the answer to that is unfortunately no, because the 7-OH washes out of your bloodstream very quickly. And when they test it in an autopsy, all they see are trace amounts of metrogeny that are in every 7-OH product, except for the MGM-14-15s. So there you have the conundrum that's there. But every parent needs to have available to them the truth, not some hyped up anti-kratom crusade that's empowering them to become a part of this group, but rather to learn the truth about what caused the death of that loved one. And I remember that mother in Ohio said, I wish that more families would challenge what is being told to them by a medical examiner and coroner. And I think that's where we really are. So do we think that medical examiners and trained forensic experts are deliberately lying? Of course not. Do we think that they use shoddy procedures? Do we think that they fail to follow the requirements that are published by the various organizations that they are members to and that provide postmortem investigation standards? Yeah, I think they are pretty shoddy because they've demonstrated that to be the case. Are they like that emergency room doctor that jumped to some conclusion because he heard that kratom use was increasing? Is it because he had a bias? We don't know, but it's certainly something we'd like to find out along the way. But bottom line is that for the KDA to suggest that I have to acknowledge that medical examiners are trained experts and therefore, despite some potential for there be some infallibility, the consistent identification of kratom as a causal factor in thousands of fatal cases is not a vast conspiracy to falsely blame kratom. I think it's part of a misinformation narrative that's been generated by medical professionals over the past couple of years, and that's why we're in the situation that we're in today. Number 8, as the conditions, we're getting down to the last 3. The AK acknowledges that many kratom distributors, manufacturing vendors operate with opaque corporate structures and shell companies, which actually makes it impossible for many families to pursue lawsuits. That is a talking point directly from the trial attorneys that are working with them. In fact, it is well understood that in the manufacture and distribution and the retail sales of kratom products, as there are for every product that's in the marketplace, there can be various entities that are established that are separate corporate structures based on product liability concerns and for what their responsibilities are. And just as an example, in the state of Georgia, the trial attorneys were the main advocates for a provision that requires in the state of Georgia, if you sell a kratom product, that you have to have a separate corporate entity description of a business operating in the state of Georgia, which requires you to create a new corporate entity. So serving, self-feeding kind of growth in that sort of thing. Are there companies that have attempted to avoid responsibility? That happens. And when that happens, they certainly should be held accountable in the appropriate venue, which is a court of law. But don't use this as an excuse because the trial attorneys don't like it as a basis for claiming that kratom deaths are rampant, when in fact that doesn't support that notion at all. Number 9, while some KD members are involved in individual product liability cases, most are not, and the civil court system is a legitimate mechanism for resolving disputes. Of course, the court system is a legitimate mechanism for resolving disputes, but I can tell you that there are many cases, and I've seen them firsthand, that are not brought because they don't have the merit to them, because it was not just kratom. It was in fact other issues, other substances that were involved, and that really speaks to that. Finally, and this is one that they characterize as last, and I quote, the AK acknowledges that the open quote, show me the autopsy report, close quote, culture promoted by the pro-kratom community is ghoulish and inappropriate. No. If a family wants to have a private situation and protect the privacy, they're entitled to do so. But they can't come out and say, we have our son or daughter or our spouse or a cousin or a family member died of kratom, and not be willing to have that autopsy subjected to a review so that we know. Because it's not about us knowing, it's about policymakers who really have to make the decision. And they should know. And so autopsies ought to be present and available and evaluated for what they are. We have a situation in Idaho where there is a case that's being circulated widely on Facebook claiming that a child died of a kratom overdose. And the facts of that autopsy are open to significant challenges. And we believe when the final evaluation is done, it's going to show that the medical examiner didn't do a very good job. And they leapt to this conclusion. And I can tell you about a case 5 years ago, where actually 6 years ago, where a coroner in the state of Idaho, I think it was Bannock County, called me and said that he had been jawboned by the FDA to call a death case a kratom overdose. And the circumstances around that case were that the individual had taken kratom because he was thinking that it would help him get off of some of the drugs that he was on, had gone to a bar in the dead of winter, had become intoxicated, stumbled out of the bar, fell into a ditch, and died of hypothermia. When they did the toxicology screen, they saw high levels of alcohol consumption and high levels of other drugs, and kratom was detected in the system. The FDA itself called this coroner and said to him, we want you to change the cause of death to kratom intoxication. Now, that was in 2019. That individual that was talking to me said, I am the coroner. And they told me that when I refused the FDA's request, they said, let us talk to the coroner. He goes, I am the coroner. And then they escalated it to the Association of Coroners in the state of Idaho. And he said, let me get her on the phone with us. And the FDA hung up. So this is what happens. Now, I'm glad that the FDA has now changed their posture. But back in 2019, they were riding that wave of anti-kratom narratives. And to go to that level, it's understandable why today we would still see remnants of that, where you have medical examiners and coroners who are leaping, or emergency room doctors who are leaping to incorrect conclusions about kratom. So I think the unfortunate part of this is that when you challenge an advocate, and I'm talking about advocates, not about grieving families, because they're entitled to their privacy. We should show respect and empathy for them. But when they take it to the next level, organize and become advocates, then it's fair game for these discussions to take place. And they cannot hide behind, oh, well, you can't attack us. There is a very strong advocate in the state of Virginia who appears to be a well-meaning and very intelligent individual. His name is Dean Francis. You can go on LinkedIn and you can see he's launched a strong anti-kratom crusade. And he went after a kratom advocate and demonized her because she challenged some of the statements that were being made by a KDA advocate, an advocate, not a family member who was merely having private grieving, but rather it was an individual who was using that particular situation as part of the KDA advocacy. And yet, Mr. Francis, obviously was unhappy about that. I asked Mr. Francis if he would have a public webinar where he could invite his scientists because he believes that his son became addicted to kratom and it had very significant adverse effects on his son. I don't know the particulars of that case, only that that's what he represents. I understand it, and we could have that discussion. I don't know what the product was. I don't know what the concentration of the product was. At this point, it's still a mystery. But I asked Mr. Francis if he'd be willing to get his scientist, and he, on a webinar, I would invite a scientist on the kratom side, and we could see. And initially, he agreed. And then he said, no, on second thought, no, we don't want to do that. Not yet. Well, when's yet coming? Because he's involved heavily in campaigning in the state of Virginia in order to try to enact a kratom ban in the state of Virginia. Families who are grieving have every right to grieve. They can do so in private. They deserve our empathy, and no one in the kratom community should be attacking a family in that circumstance. But when, as I said earlier, you become an advocate, when you enter the public world of dialogue and you want to make your case and you want to say things and draw conclusions based on evidence and data, it's challengeable. And it is fair debate that should happen rather than hiding behind, the fact that you lost a loved one and not being willing to be accountable for it. The disinformation campaign against kratom is real. Coroners and medical examiners need to meet their own standards for postmortem investigations. ER doctors have become advocates rather than caregivers. Obviously, we've seen that happen. So I think that that's our challenge overall. So I want to talk to you now, and then we can open it up to answering some of the questions that you can post in the chat along the way, the question and answer section. But Ohio. The Ohio Board of Pharmacy, at the direction of Governor DeWine, did two things. One is that they emergency scheduled 70H. That was an emergency rule. It was put into effect, and in the state of Ohio, 70H is banned. They have a brief period in which it will become fully effective. They also opened up separately, under regular rulemaking, a proposal to ban metrogyny. Now, that process is ongoing right now. The Board of Pharmacy received a presentation from the chief pharmacist at the Board of Pharmacy on her 8-factor analysis. I listened to that presentation carefully. I can tell you that it was riddled with outdated science. And I know that the KDA people are all upset that I said that, but it's true. There was outdated information that they were relying upon that simply has been updated by science, by studies that have been done, and by new literature, which was not adequately, actually addressed by that chief pharmacist. I think that that's significant. We are going to provide a rebuttal to that 8-factor analysis because I think the conclusions were outdated, inaccurate, and I think that they were poorly framed in terms of taking this major action. But the thing that was most critical about that, after a detailed, complex presentation by a pharmacist, you had 8 members of the Board of Pharmacy appointed by the governor because of their expertise in these areas. And you would have thought that one of them would at least have a single question about the very technical, complex presentation made by the chief pharmacist at the Board of Pharmacy. Not a single question. Rapidly going to unanimously approving, moving forward the rule that had been requested by the governor in order to have metrogyny become, at the conclusion of the review process, a scheduled substance in the state of state of Ohio. That's something that obviously needs to be addressed, and we are going to do so. The first process in this step is that under Ohio's law, which is called the Common Sense Initiative, they are now soliciting comments that are due by January 28th. This is an evaluation of the economic impacts on the state of Utah, primarily on businesses who are in the business of retailing kratom products. If you're a kratom bar owner, if you are a kratom specific shop, or if you are a convenience store, all of this requires that there be a report to the state in order to allow the legislature to make a decision about whether the adverse economic impacts on the state outweigh whatever the arguments being made by the Board of Pharmacy about the alleged harms that kratom presents in the state of Ohio. When the Common Sense Initiative is concluded, then the Board of Pharmacy will open up a general comment period and a hearing, we believe, for metrogeny being scheduled. When they did this 3 years ago, we had over 300 kratom consumers who showed up, and it was after about 200 of them had testified, the Board of Pharmacy waved the white flag and said that they were not going to proceed. And I think that that's where they need to be this time. We need to replicate that. And obviously, we will be encouraging every kratom consumer. And here's why you should do it. I suppose there are some kratom consumers sitting at home saying, well, you know, it's not that big a deal to me. I know we're going to win. We've won in the past. The KDA is actively putting out information onto social media saying that they are working with the governor's office. Let me repeat that. They are working with the governor's office, and the governor's office wants us, the KDA, to submit comments in order to make sure that the Board of Pharmacy concludes that metrogeny should be a scheduled substance. I do not begrudge advocacy. They can do that. But make no mistake that they are gearing up with their $400 and some that they've supposedly raised, and they are actively pursuing a ban on kratom in the state of Ohio, and we need to rise up, fight, and be prepared to handle that kind of thing. That hearing, we will need to be well populated with kratom advocates to tell the true story, not the story that was told by the chief pharmacist by the Board of Pharmacy, which was heavily tainted and didn't adequately review the truth of the matter, in our opinion. We need to stand up and have that message. When that hearing is concluded, then it is up to the Joint Committee on Agency Regulatory Review, I believe is the name of the JCAR committee, in the legislature, who will then themselves have a hearing, and we want to make sure that we obviously have our teams there, our advocates there, and the experts there that will tell the true story about kratom and its safety profile along the way. I will mention to you that the chief pharmacist did not give any credence to the FDA's dose finding study, which directly contradicted most of what she was saying about the potential hazards of kratom consumption. That's an interesting point because the FDA certainly took notice of it, and they have now shifted, and it's Commissioner McCary who has said that the focus of the FDA is not on natural kratom-related products. So what is it, at the end of the day, that the Board of Pharmacy chief pharmacist knows about the safety profile of kratom that the FDA doesn't? Because if she were right, the FDA would be advocating for metrogeny to be scheduled just as they have for 7-OH. They would not have said that natural kratom-related products are not our focus, because it is the FDA's mission and mandate to protect the health and safety of the American people. So what is it that she knows? And what is it, as she presented that material to the Board of Pharmacy, that she knows that the 12 independent experts called the Expert Committee on Drug Dependence that were responding to a recommendation for scheduling of kratom at the international level with a much lower threshold for evidence and data than the 8-factor analysis embedded in the Federal Controlled Substances Act and in the Ohio law, and that Expert Committee on Drug Dependence unanimously agreed that kratom didn't need to be scheduled. So what is it that they know? And of course, the answer to that is there isn't anything, that this is just a misapplication of an amalgamation of a lot of information that is simply part of this disinformation campaign about kratom that's a carryover and is now outdated along the way. So we have a challenge in Ohio. We have a window of about 60 to 75 days that we are going to have to be very active in fighting back against this misinformation campaign that is being launched there. And then there's a bigger issue, and that's as much as I can tell you about Ohio. And again, I'll come back to any questions anyone has. There are a number of states that are now following the guidance that's provided in the current language that's on the FDA and Kratom webpage, which we know is badly outdated and is inconsistent with Commissioner McCary's statement, where he said that the focus of the FDA is not on natural kratom leaf products. That site needs to be revised. It begs for revision in order to align itself with the commissioner's statements and the conclusions the commissioner has made based on the evidence and data that's available to them at the FDA right now. They're slow, and they've told us they're going to make revisions to that site. But currently, the language on that site, which empowers many states in order to use their food statutes that overlay with the federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, you're seeing California, a major marketplace where the California Department of Public Health is relying almost solely on the FDA and Kratom website. That's why that website needs to be up, webpage needs to be updated along the way. It is, when you look at all of the bases for the seizures that are being taken in the state of California, it is because of the FDA and Kratom webpage. And in some cases, the inspectors are actually delivering a Xerox copy of the FDA and Kratom webpage as a justification for it. So we're working hard with the Department of Public Health. We're working hard with the legislature in order to push along the Baines bill, which is the Kratom Consumer Protection Act. There is also a bill that's been filed for to ban 7-OH. And the 7-OH advocates are coming out of the woodwork saying, oh, Kratom and 7-OH are the same. We know that's not true. They're saying that to the Kratom advocates, hey, mark our words that if they ban us, the next amendment's going to be to ban all Kratom. Well, that's the same sucker job they did on us to the Kratom community in September of 2023 when they entered the marketplace and called 7-OH products a chemically manipulated, horribly potent product, Kratom. And that's why we have to resist this kind of enticing deal that we have to join the 7-OH people in opposing Senator Umbrecht's bill. We're not going to do that. We think that good sense is going to prevail there in California, and we think it's a good demarcation that needs to be done. The same replicable situation is occurring in Minnesota, where the Department of Agriculture is relying upon the FDA and Kratom webpage and the language in it and why it has to be corrected. And we're working hard there. We also are working with a member of the legislature that actually starts up in February for a Kratom Consumer Protection Act. We're seeing the same thing in Michigan. We have a Kratom Consumer Protection Act there. And obviously we're doing good work up there in working with the agency and the governor's office. But they're relying on the FDA and Kratom webpage. The same is true in New Mexico. And New Mexico has been more difficult because they're just locked and loaded that they're not going to believe anything that any of us say. And so they're relying on that. And so we have a lot of work to do. But the confusion that I referenced earlier, that was the direct result of what was happening in the FDA's press conference that they held on July 29th of last year, where they called for the scheduling of 7-OH. And now the conflation of the two substances, Kratom and 7-OH, is leading to many legislators who simply haven't done their homework, haven't seen the evidence and data that's required, are proposing bans. We see it in New Jersey. By the way, New Jersey is an example. CJ's Law, named after a young man who died allegedly of Kratom only. And yet the autopsy, which is publicly available, contradicts that directly. And so as much sympathy as we have for the family, for the struggles that young man had, it's not the basis for the enactment of legislation that doesn't support what that autopsy says. Certainly regulations are important. We believe in them. And we think that there could be certainly tighter regulations than currently exist in New Jersey where there are none, but that's vastly different than having a ban as been proposed. We all know that the ban in Connecticut is going through the rulemaking process, and we're working with the Connecticut legislature now to try to get an amendment in that draws the distinction between 7-OH and natural kratom leaf products, which we think the FDA is correct on as we go forward. Bans in South Carolina, where well-intentioned legislators simply have it wrong. That's true in South Dakota. It's true in Idaho, where we understand the Police Chiefs Association is going to advocate for a ban bill. We have a KCPA bill that addresses the issue of good regulatory framework to protect people, to make sure that it is safe kratom products and they're properly labeled in the works up there. So we think that's great. In Montana, the Board of Pharmacy is looking to ban 7-OH, and the 7-OH advocates came out and said, oh, kratom's the same as 7-OH. And of course, that's created some confusion. So we're working up there too, but the FDA and kratom webpage is giving us trouble there. We have ban bills in Massachusetts, but also a KCPA bill. Massachusetts is an interesting state in that their legislative process is kind of difficult, but we continue to work there and we're pushing hard. In New York, we had good news with the governor signing bills that would limit the age limit to 21 and for labeling restrictions. And we're working with them on some specific contouring of that to make sure that it is something that actually allows for the sale of safe kratom products and bans the bad stuff. We expect that there will be a ban bill in Tennessee, but we are working now with legislators there to have them to advocate for the KCPA. We've seen ban bills being rumored or being talked about directly by specific sponsors in Iowa and Kansas and in West Virginia. So we've got work to do there as well, and we will obviously do that. And we've got a KCPA and a ban bill in Pennsylvania. So that's replicated in lots of other states. So we've got work to do. Obviously, we need the advocacy community. I can tell you that there are a number of other states that are doing it, and I'm glad to talk specifics. I'll tell you Florida, where we are there. There is obviously a bill that was advanced by the Attorney General in order to codify the emergency rule he put in place on 7-OH, which restricted the content of any product to no greater than 700 milligrams, 700, I'm sorry, not milligrams, 400 parts per million by dry weight. We believe that that is a standard that's not well understood by consumers. It ought to be based on the number of milligrams in a product, nanograms per milliliter, whatever the right standard is that is understandable by consumers. And we believe that that should be amended in the legislature. We're working on that along with our KCPA bill. This illustrates how complex these kinds of discussions can be. I was on the phone with the Arizona Attorney General's office, with the Missouri. I met with the Missouri Attorney General's office. I met with the Department of Agriculture in Georgia. We're working hard in order to correct the record, to give proper alignment, to give information that's credible to these various regulatory bodies so that we can, in fact, deal with the issues that are currently being thrust up there. So we have a national challenge that we all are working on, and we encourage every advocate to get re-engaged just like we did in 2016 when we beat the man. And the man being a disinformation campaign that had been initiated by career staff at the FDA that subsequently was proven, as Dr. Giroir, then the Assistant Secretary for Health in 2018, to characterize what the FDA people at the time were saying as embarrassingly poor evidence and data and a failure to consider the overall public health. We've made real progress since then, and we need to continue that progress as we go forward. So I think that's the bottom line in terms of what we're doing. I'm going to turn to the questions, and maybe I've answered some of them already, but I'll try to go through them quickly. I don't want to keep everybody all night on the phone here. Anthony asked, when is the new California legislation becoming active and officially going into effect? I want to know how much longer I have. Well, the legislative process is ongoing. The Baines bill passed the Assembly unanimously. It's now before the Senate. It's going to require some activity by the appropriate committees in the Senate. There was some realignment of committee chairmen that was done, and so we're waiting to see. The current ban bill on 7-OH is just starting, and we'll have hearings here, and so we'll have to see how that goes. Adam asked, how's the Facebook fight going? We have members of Congress reaching out to Meta and to YouTube, challenging them on the basis for their allowing 7-OH ads to be up there where they're making money, but not allowing advocates to participate in their First Amendment rights to advocate for obviously the positions that we take on ensuring that safe kratom products, natural kratom leaf products, are available to consumers. So we're working hard on that. Drea asked the same thing about California. I think that I've answered that. Uh, Stephen asked, is there a way to get the latest 8-factor from Dr. Henningfield in 2025? That one is on 70H, and we certainly could. I'll make sure that it gets posted on our website so that you can see it. Second is California AB 1088. That's a Baines bill. Having passed Assembly, still able to move in 26 in the Senate? Yes. It does not have to restart from scratch. It's already passed. There may be some amendments that would require then going back to the entire body, not starting the committee process again. But that's typical of these kinds of things, and so we'll just have to work through that. Nicholas asked, any update on the appeal for Wisconsin? We're working hard in trying to negotiate this, slow moving. I hope to have a better update on this in our next Zoom call, but that one's frustrating for me because we know that the Controlled Substances Board has acknowledged that kratom doesn't meet the criteria, and now it's up to the legislature to do something, and so it's a very complex issue. Misty asked, is the Florida case fee similar to what Colorado's was, where they were trying to stomp out mid and small side vendors with high fees? This is not as straightforward as I'd like it to be, but the fiscal note on the original KCPA that we were advocating for in the last couple of years had a fiscal note from the Department of Agriculture that was astronomically high that put everybody out of business. And so that's gone, I think, for now. And now the Department of Agriculture just waiting for the legislature to give them more direction. So I think that we're okay in that. I'll keep you posted as we go along. Michael asked about what's the opinion on Illinois state level? Do they agree with the local bans, or they keep pursuing KCPA? They are going to continue to push the state KCPA. Whether or not we can get preemption on local bans is an up in the air thing. Most legislators don't like that in their local deal. But once we get the state KCPA, and I think it diffuses some of this state stuff, and that's where we are. Also, do you think that the idea to have it where kratom is not sold in gas stations but sold 21 plus establishments and require licensing and employees be trained in educating customers? Those are things we're discussing. Dr. Nora Volko from NIDA, I think, said it right when she was discussing how kratom should be sold in retail outlets where it's accessible, whatever level. And her argument was simply this, that there are many people who have accessed kratom because it helps them to alleviate their opioid addictions and withdrawal symptoms, and it helps them as a harm reduction tool. And her view is that many of those people will never seek treatment that they should get because of the stigma attached to it. She also said that there are many people that don't have access to a bed because they live in a rural location where the beds aren't available, or they live in a location where the beds are available, but they're too expensive in order to access, and so that bars them from getting there. And so her argument about gas stations is, as long as the product is compliant with state law, as long as there's a good enforcement to make sure that you're not selling adulterated products, that they should be allowed to be sold. And I think that sort of mirrors what happens with alcohol and cigarettes. So it's a good argument. We remain hopeful that we're going to be able to get that done. Misty asked, when do we need to submit personal testimony? There will be a posting set up by the Board of Pharmacy that will follow the Common Sense Initiative when that concludes on January 28th. So we'll keep you posted on that. Nick asked, is LA Public Health still going after natural kratom? They absolutely are. They believe that the FDA and kratom webpage justifies their enforcement actions. That's why we're trying hard to get that done. Adam makes the comment that it sounds like Governor DeWine wants a ban. He does. But it's also true that he, A, is not running for reelection, B, that it's typical of every governor in tension between the legislature and the governor, that he has not, doesn't have a deep reservoir of support in the legislature. So I think that there will be an open discussion that will be fairly held about kratom and whether or not the governor is right on this. And we know he's wrong on it. So that's the way it is. Jeff says, he adds the 2 cents on kratom testimony to all the links that have a place for them. Even though I'm from out of state, should I continue to do this, or am I wasting my time? One thing we don't want is people capturing the IDs or the zip codes of a resident in a state when you're not that resident. We simply tell people do not do that. We want this to be a credible advocacy opportunity. So you can comment and not be from that state, then that's fine. But don't misidentify yourself. But what Jeff has suggested is important. You should comment. There's nothing wrong with it. And the more people that are able to weigh in with their testimonials about kratom, the better. I guarantee you that the kratom danger awareness people are playing the game, and they are not going to be able to win this battle without their playing the game and being out of state. So let's do the same thing. If their voices are credible, ours are too. And you can't just slice and dice because you have someone who wants to exploit the situation. Um, Heidi asked us to update. I've already done California, Utah. Utah was the first state to pass a Kratom Consumer Protection Act. They have a state senator there now who, by his representation on a Facebook post, is representing a client in a product liability case. He also happens to be an influential state legislator. He has already made his presentation on a kratom ban bill to an interim health committee in November. And I watched that committee hearing. I was surprised at the lack of research that this senator had provided. He, for example, during the presentation that he made for advocating for his ban bill on kratom, said that all of the research that's been done has been funded by industry. That's not true. The vast majority, the overwhelming majority. How do I say this? There are very few industry funded studies, over $100 million in NIDA funding of kratom research. But specifically, he was asked by a member of the committee, well, what about the FDA's dose finding study? And he said off the cuff, and I can accept that maybe he was just wrong. He said, no, that was an industry funded study. But at the end of the presentation, looking at his phone in order to give it some sort of credibility, he then announced, without being asked, he said, I verified. And he kind of looks at his phone like that's the verification. And he said, I verified that that was an industry funded study. It is not. If you go to the FDA and Kratom webpage today, it says that that was an FDA study, and they are now in the process of having it peer reviewed and published. So how he says that, I don't know. But I know he's an impassioned advocate. He told one of our lobbyists that I'm a liar. He said he can't, in part because in his lie that he identified was that I said that there are no deaths that are associated with kratom. That's not a lie. That's based on the evaluation of the material that's available. And if he would look at it objectively, and as an attorney, he certainly can, he would see that there are no kratom deaths that are kratom only that have been identified so far. There's interpretive data that you can make from various research, but there's nobody that claims that there is a actual kratom death. There are medical examiners and coroner's reports that say, that there are metrogeny intoxication, but when you look behind it, you see that it's not well documented. They didn't follow their own procedures for postmortem investigations and all that. Then on a radio interview, this good senator said, without question, that the Mayo Clinic has done some really good research on kratom. Now, obviously, he's borrowing on the credibility of one of the finest medical institutions in America. But the truth is, the Mayo Clinic hasn't spent one single penny on kratom research. They have a multi-million-dollar information sharing agreement with the FDA, and they have republished statements made by the FDA, perhaps with some commentary of their own people, but it is a paid relationship, and it's not based on any independent science, and I think the senator was wrong on that. Now, do I call him a liar? No, I think he was misinformed, and I think there needs to be a more rational discussion along the way. Brian asked, what's the AK's position on the new Florida bills being proposed to have FDEX regulate kratom manufacturers under CFR 210 pharmaceuticals? No, we oppose that. And the bill will also legalize 7-OH. That's an advocacy for 7-OH? No. We know that there are identical bills in Missouri, but there's already been a KCPA passed in Missouri, vetoed by a former governor, and we think that we're in good terms there. Um, Obviously, the bill in Florida was sponsored by Senator Gruters, who's a good friend, former advocate for KCPAs. But this new issue of 70H, he's suddenly gotten captured by them. So we think that there is a lot more advocacy work that needs to be done with Senator Gruters to help him understand why the 70H people are feeding him a bucket of malarkey, if I can say it that way. Brian, we're going to be working closely with you down there. Our lobbyists are on this, so we're working away. Now, a question from Ethan on California. AB 1088 is the main focus, not SB 758, although I support that bill as well. Now the state Senate is back in session. Is the health committee meeting? Are the committee members defined? Yes, we know who those people are. Our pro 1088 efforts being spent on focusing on our personal state senators. We're going to have an advocacy program that we ask you to look at in terms of who you should be contacting, what hearings you should try to attend. That will be an updated situation. We're now gathering more information about when the informational hearing is going to be held on Kratom. That's an important first step that was promised to us. And then we'll see where the committees go. Is the AK going to take the lead organizing communications? Yes, we are on top of it. We are partnering with the Global Kratom Coalition and the Botanics for Better Health and Wellness. We are in lockstep on this. Are there AKA lobbyists in Sacramento? There are, as there are for the other groups that I just mentioned. We will give you a clear and solid structure to follow in supporting the passage of 1088 going forward in the Senate. And obviously, the actions by the California Department of Public Health are hurting everyone, and we want to get you back in business as quickly as possible. Denver asked, how can I get the location of the Ohio, I'm not sure, netting, so I can show up? Oh, the meetings. We'll give you that information, and certainly you'll have adequate time, as much as they give us. Sometimes these committee hearings get called very quickly. We'll do it. Rebecca asked, how do we fight back against the horrible headlines that state Kratom when the article is about 70H? We're focusing on this in a PR campaign with the media. We've already sent out a couple advisories about it. You're going to see, I think, some real progress on that front, because obviously they're not doing it right. Crystal asked, can you all figure out how to test for 70H from autopsy so MIT stops getting blamed? This is a challenge, but when 70H washes out of the bloodstream and therefore is not present in traditional testing, there are artifacts that are there. And so we're looking to try to identify testing methodologies that we will ask the medical examiners to follow. And I think that's important. Misty says we should go state by state and have our town hall meetings. Misty's doing a fabulous job, along with her advocate friends, in moving these information hearings or town halls forward. I'm glad to participate as much as my schedule allows in order to participate with those. So thank you for that. Eric asked, do you think Kansas City is still looking to ban Kratom? I was there in Kansas City this past week, and they didn't hold the hearing. They pushed it to the end of the month. I think they're going to separate Kratom out of it, and I think you're going to see there be a clear distinction on those products. Ed asked, can persons outside of Ohio offer personal stories? Yes. It's up to the advocates, the legislators, to determine who they listen to. Adam asked, does Florida KCPA require a $3 million liability insurance policy? That's not something we have. You can't get personal liability insurance in the Kratom industry unless you go to extraordinary lengths. And we think that that's not a good policy, and we certainly don't push for that. Christo asked, what happened to SB 299 in Ohio asking for the KCPA? There's going to be more action on our KCPAs in Ohio, so stay tuned for that. Why are these two sisters blaming Kratom for their brother committing suicide? The grieving families that feed into this disinformation campaign that want to go public with these claims, these are heart-wrenching stories, and we're gonna fight those. Misty points out in Tennessee that the main proponent for banning Kratom is running for re-election. We had to vote her out. I don't disagree with that. I'm going to be in Tennessee on Tuesday to talk to some legislators, and hopefully we're going to get moving on that. Drea asked, what's going on in Rhode Island? Don't they have a KCPA? and ban 7OH? Yes, they do. And there's nothing happening there other than 7OH people want to get rid of that provision. Ethan asks, I'm assuming that there is a vision for putting pressure on the California State Senate to move 1088 ahead. There is, and we're working hard to promote that bill to get it passed. We want to make sure that there's a clear message sent to the California Department of Health that kratom is legal for sale in the state of California. So we're going to push them as fast as we can to get this done. Crystal says, as you know, the KD is working with Andrew Kolodny anti-opiate movement, and he supports Suboxone, which is the opiate, because he works in that space. Absolutely. And you know, they're entitled to their argument, but that doesn't mean they get credibility as a result of it. So you know, how they can make that connection, and thinking that supporting someone like Kolodny, who's this big supporter of Suboxone for everything, makes no sense to me. So we're going to keep fighting on that. Nick asks, is there an actual timeline on the FDA updating their webpage? No, we've gotten commitments from the commissioner's office that it's going to happen. We keep looking every day. It's a fight with the mid-level layer of career bureaucrats who just don't think it's a very good idea. So we have to kind of live with that. Shane asks, are there any large kratom advocacy groups that can join alliance with the AK in lobbying? There are. The Global Kratom Coalition and the Botanics for Better Health and Wellness are working together cooperatively. This is an alliance that we've formed. We have vastly different backgrounds and issue positions. We have united going forward with working in these states. So I think that's a fabulous outcome, and we're working hard on it. Jennifer asked, what is the status of KCP in Ohio, or is it in legislation? The rulemaking process involves the legislature, but we also have a KCPA that's being fought there. Ethan says, sorry to hound, I may not have been very clear, so don't worry, Ethan, you're not hounding me. Just hoping to clarify, is there any sense of when the fight for 1088 will begin? This is determined first by an informational hearing, and then the Senate will take up 1088, and we're hopeful that we can get that pushed through. Adam asks, is there any update on the federal KCPA? We have the language that has been approved by Ledge Council. We're going to now working with the sponsors to get it actually introduced. You'll see that in the next couple of weeks. Ed asks, is harm reduction understood and or accepted by policymakers? Great question. Some do, but in some sectors, harm reduction is a bad word because, particularly in some of the conservative states, they don't like to see, you know, the distribution of needles, which is a good harm reduction tool. They think that that's just empowering and enabling drug addicts. So it depends on the jurisdiction as to whether that argument works. More conservative states, I would say no. In the more leftist states or more liberal states, it does. So we keep working on that. So we've been at this for an hour and 45 minutes. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Misty makes a final point that the anti-kratom documentary is premiering soon. So get ready, advocates, no question. And by the way, I was interviewed for that particular documentary that's now being put out, highlighting the death of a family member that was close to a big Hollywood producer, which is why it's getting this treatment as being this high level, high quality production. But I can tell you that what's happened in the intervening 2 years doesn't allow for that documentary to be very accurate about anything. It'll be interesting to see if they account for the FDA's change position. We'll see how it works out, but it's in the same way that science evolves, in the same way that the policy landscape evolves. We hope that people will see this for what it is, and certainly recognize that for those grieving families that they feel very empowered in order to attack kratom, but they have to be accountable. And that's the bottom line for us. In the same way that when you challenge these people to a public webinar, they run for the hills. And that was true with the KDA dad. That was true with Mr. Francis in Virginia. These are probably wonderful people outside of this advocacy thing. I hope they think that I'm a reasonable person too, but I've been called a murderer. I've been called, a drug dealer. And that's sort of the reaction that comes from some of the extremists on that side of it. And we unfortunately have had some people on our side attack those people. That's uncalled for. Shouldn't happen. I hope we work together on this. So we will do exactly what we've described here. We're going to continue to work on it. We will hold some state-specific webinars. For example, in California, when we get a good view of when the scheduling for the informational hearing, which will be the trigger for 1088 to move through the Senate, it will go through one of the Senate committees, maybe two, depending on the appropriation required. You might have the Health Committee and the Appropriations Committee. Then it'll hit the floor. And then if there are any amendments, it'll have to go back for a full vote, not back through the committees in the California thing. So we'll continue to work on that. State-specific webinars in Ohio and California are likely, certainly in Utah as the legislative process there heats up, and in other states as we identify the need to do it. So my appreciation to everyone for stepping up in helping us, listening today, seeing where we are, and certainly we welcome your input. We need your help in these various states in order to be the advocates, to tell the story, the testimonials, to counteract some of the misinformation, the deliberate disinformation that's being circulated by the anti-kratom advocates. So thanks to everyone. A special shout out to those influencers, Misty and her team that advocates it for it. I know that we couldn't be as effective but for their efforts. And I encourage everyone to follow Misty and listen to her podcast along the way. So thanks, everyone. We appreciate your time today.
I ain't got no damn podcast.
Dude, some of these comments. Y'all,
I know. I'm over here giggling and shit with some of these comments.
oh man. Oh man. I don't know. You know, I say
Yeah, I ain't got no podcast, you know. We just go live when we go live. Ain't nothing scheduled. We just do it when we feel like it. Cause we already where did you go? I don't know where Jen went. Yeah, Mel, I ain't got no podcast. I was like, where did Jen go? Where did Jen's middle finger toe go?
yeah, I pressed the wrong thing. Oh, goodness gracious.
But yeah, like I was saying, we just go live when we go live. We want to show y'all what happens during, like, you know, legislation hearings or, you know.
And the really important stuff too, you know. I know a lot of times these legislation hearings are freaking incredibly ridiculous. And I think people need to see it. Like how these are people that are elected into, you know, their positions and making decisions for a whole county, city, state.
Mm-hmm.
It's insane.
And it's important to highlight it because that way, if it comes to your backyard, you know, you will be ready. You know, you could see. I mean, they're not all the same, but they're all there's pretty much like a common theme.
Yeah. But I mean, you know, at least like seeing behind the scenes and how it goes, I think is a real big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm glad everybody showed up tonight and y'all got to see the Board of Pharmacy and hear Big Mac tell us what's up.
The Big Mac attack. Like I was telling Mike earlier, I was like, that's, you know, he's venting because he gets hit all different angles, all different directions, you know. And I could see that him doing these webinars are probably therapeutic for him.
Oh yeah, because I mean, you got to vent. You know, you get that from every side like he does. Oh, I can't imagine.
Because Mike, because it's money.
Yep.
You got the money, you can promote whatever.
Good night, Mel.
Bye, Mel.
And you know, another thing is like, you know, a lot of like we were talking about on our TikTok last night, you know, commenting on some of these things on Facebook. A lot of the anti-kratom people will not only, you know, report your comments, but they'll follow your profile. If they see anything, they'll report it. And it's like, how petty.
How is extremely petty. I don't report none of their
I
stuff.
don't either. I believe in freedom of speech.
I believe in karma.
Oh, yeah.
I've never reported nobody's stuff ever.
Thank you for everything you do, Renee, too.
Yes, Renee.
You're
Looks
all a
like
team.
I know you were part of that crew that went to Ohio first, right? Where there was like 300 something people. Pretty sure you were.
Yeah.
So get ready for now round 2. If need be, I will fly my happy ass in there.
You sure will. You sure will.
Yep.
I have a good feeling about Ohio, but I think it's going to take a fight. It ain't going to
Yeah,
be
it
an
will.
easy one. But somebody, my brother-in-law said, anything that you have to really work for or fight for, it's always worth it in the long run. He said that about, I can't remember what it was. And I was like, that's a good saying. I'm going to remember that.
Yeah.
But anyway, well, thanks everybody for coming, and I hope everybody has a good rest of y'all's evening.
Yep. So just stay tuned for whenever we got to send in our personal testimonies. So
Yeah. We'll keep you
yeah,
posted.
creating warriors for sure. Like Brandon used to say, shields high, warriors.
Yeah. I
Shields
like
high.
Brandon.
Me too.
Hopefully Connecticut will get straightened out. Somewhere, everywhere. Everywhere it's something going on at one point in time,
Yep.
But yeah, and again, Helton Haynes, anybody in Tennessee, Chattanooga area, vote her out.
Vote her out.
Get her out of there.
Get her out.
Oh, goodness. Take care.
You're welcome, Dose of Reality.
Yeah. Thanks for coming. Peace, Mike.
Bye, everybody. Have a great night.
Bye, everybody.